Moiravibes.
Never give up. Daniel always believed that hard work and kindness could take him far. He had been working in sales at his company for 5 years, always giving his best. He stayed late to help colleagues, shared his ideas, and never said no when someone needed support. But instead of respect, he faced something else: bullying. His co-workers often laughed at him. They called him too soft and said he would never get promoted. They took credit for his ideas and ignored him in meetings. Even his manager didn't appreciate his efforts. No matter how hard he worked, success seemed far away. Daniel sometimes felt like giving up, but deep inside, he knew he couldn't change who he was. He didn't want to be like the others, cold and selfish. So he kept going, hoping that one day things would be different. One rainy evening, Daniel was getting ready to leave the office when an older man entered the showroom. It was nearly closing time, and most employees were already packing up. The man looked around with a serious expression before approaching the product display. He let out a deep sigh and shook his head. "Terrible quality," the man muttered. "Too expensive, too weak, not good enough. Do you even care about your customers?" Most employees ignored him, pretending not to hear. Daniel, however, stepped forward with a polite smile. "Good evening, sir. Can I help you with anything?" The man turned to him with a doubtful look. "You? Fine. Tell me, which of these products is actually worth my money?" Despite being tired, Daniel patiently explained the features, benefits, and differences of each product. He asked the man questions to understand his needs and recommended the best option. The man continued to complain. "What if it breaks? Do you have good customer service? What if I don't like it?" He fired questions one after another. Daniel answered each one calmly and professionally, never losing his patience. The other staff whispered, wondering why he was wasting time on a difficult customer. After a while, the man crossed his arms. "One more thing. It's raining outside. Do you have an umbrella?" Daniel looked at the pouring rain outside. The company didn't provide umbrellas, but he had his own. Without hesitation, he offered it to the man. "Here, sir. You can take mine." The man raised an eyebrow. "You're willing to get wet just so I stay dry?" Daniel nodded. "It's no problem, I can manage." The man chuckled. "And if I need a ride home?" Daniel hesitated for a second, but then smiled. "Do you live near here? It's on my way home. I can give you a ride." The man studied him for a moment, then smiled. "You're different from the others." "I like that." The next morning, Daniel arrived at work as usual. But something was different. People were whispering, and his manager looked nervous. A big meeting was called, and to his surprise, Daniel was invited. When he entered the conference room, his heart nearly stopped. Sitting at the head of the table was the man from the night before, the president of the company. The president smiled at Daniel. "Everyone, this young man showed kindness, patience, and professionalism when he thought no one was watching. That's the kind of person we need in leadership." Daniel's co-workers were shocked. His manager looked pale. And then, the unexpected happened. The president offered Daniel a promotion. For the first time in years, Daniel felt truly seen. He had always believed that kindness and hard work mattered, and now it finally paid off. As he walked out of the meeting, he realized something important. Success wasn't just about working hard. It was about staying true to himself. And now he had proof that being kind wasn't a weakness. It was his greatest strength.
It's okay to break up with a cheater. Emma never thought this would happen to her. She believed in love. She believed in trust. But one day, everything changed. Emma and Jake had been together for 3 years. They met in college, and from the first moment, she felt like he was special. He made her laugh, sent her good morning texts, and always held her hand when they walked together. He surprised her with little notes in her bag, remembered her favorite coffee order, and always listened when she talked about her dreams. When she was sick, he brought her soup and stayed up all night, just to make sure she was okay. He made her feel safe, like she was the most important person in his world. She thought he loved her the same way she loved him, but something started to feel different. Jake didn't text as much. He was always busy. He canceled plans at the last minute. Emma told herself he was just stressed with work. She didn't want to believe anything was wrong. One night, Emma and her best friend Lisa went to a cafe. While they were drinking coffee, Lisa suddenly looked nervous. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," Lisa said. Emma felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" she asked. Lisa hesitated. "I saw Jake yesterday, with another girl. They were holding hands." Emma's heart pounded. "Are you sure? Maybe it was just a friend." Lisa looked sad. "I wish it was, but I saw them kiss." Emma felt like the world stopped. Her hands shook. She wanted to cry, but she also felt angry. She needed to know the truth. That night, she asked Jake to meet her. He arrived late, looking guilty. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "Are you seeing someone else?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed. "I didn't want to hurt you, Emma. But yes, I met someone new. I didn't know how to tell you." Emma felt like she couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why did you lie?" "I was scared," Jake said. "I still care about you." Emma laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Caring about me doesn't mean breaking my heart." She stood up and walked away. That night she cried, but she also felt something new. Relief. She didn't have to wonder anymore. She didn't have to wait for someone who didn't truly love her. The next few weeks were hard. Some days she missed Jake. Other days she felt free. Lisa stayed by her side, reminding her that she deserved better. One evening, Emma sat alone in a park, watching the sunset. She realized something important. She had spent so much time loving Jake that she forgot to love herself. She smiled and whispered, "I choose me." It wasn't easy, but step by step, Emma moved on. She started reading new books, traveling, and spending more time with friends. She learned that love isn't just about being with someone. It's about respect, honesty, and happiness. And one day, when she was truly ready, she knew she would find someone who deserved her heart. But until then, she was happy just being herself. Sixth sense. Lisa sat in the airport, holding her coffee with both hands. She had a flight to Old York in an hour, but something didn't feel right. It wasn't fear of flying. She had taken planes many times before. It was just a strange, heavy feeling in her chest. She looked at her phone, scrolling through messages from friends. Her best friend, Sarah, had texted her earlier. "Have a safe flight. Call me when you land." Lisa sighed. Maybe she was just tired. The last few weeks had been stressful. Too much work, too many late nights. A vacation in Old York sounded perfect, but the feeling wouldn't go away. A voice over the speaker announced that her flight was boarding soon. She stood up, took a deep breath, and grabbed her bag. But as she walked toward the gate, she stopped. Something inside her said, "Don't go." She had never missed a flight in her life. It was crazy to cancel now. but the feeling was so strong that she couldn't ignore it. Lisa turned around, walked back to the counter, and took a deep breath. "Excuse me, I need to cancel my flight." The airline staff looked surprised. "Are you sure? The plane is leaving soon." "Yes," Lisa said firmly. "I'm not going." She wasn't even sure why she said it, but the moment she did, the heavy feeling in her chest started to disappear. She booked a taxi back home, telling herself she could always take another flight tomorrow. That evening, Lisa sat on her couch, scrolling through the news on her phone. Then she saw it. Her flight. The plane had crashed. Lisa's hands started shaking. She read the headline again and again, but it didn't change. Flight 276 to Old York had gone down an hour after takeoff. There were no survivors. Her heart pounded in her chest. That was supposed to be her flight. If she hadn't canceled, she would have been on that plane. Tears filled her eyes. She wasn't sure if she was in shock, grateful, or just scared. She called Sarah, her voice shaking. "Lisa, aren't you supposed to be in Old York?" Sarah asked. I canceled my flight," Lisa whispered. "I don't know why. I felt like I shouldn't go." Sarah gasped. "Lisa, that plane crashed." "I know," Lisa said. "I just saw the news." For a long time, neither of them spoke. "I don't understand," Lisa finally said. "Why did I cancel? How did I know?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was something else. But whatever it was, I'm just glad you're safe." Lisa nodded, wiping her tears. She had no answer, but she knew one thing. Sometimes, you have to listen to that quiet voice inside you. And sometimes, it can save your life.
A second chance. Jack wasn't a robber. At least, not until a few months ago. He had lost his job, then his apartment. With nowhere to go, he had been sleeping in shelters or on park benches, searching for food wherever he could. At first, he tried to find work, but no one wanted to hire a man with no address, no clean clothes, and no hope in his eyes. Hunger changed him. The first time he stole, it was just an apple from a market stall. Then, a sandwich from a small shop. Each time, guilt ate away at him, but survival always won. He hated himself for it, but what else could he do? One evening, he saw an old man walking alone in a quiet street. The man moved slowly, holding a small bag in his hand. He looked weak. This will be easy, Jake thought. He put on his hood, checked that no one was watching, and followed the man. As the old man turned into a small alley, Jake made his move. He grabbed the man's bag and pulled hard. But to his surprise, the old man did not let go. Instead, he held onto it tightly and looked Jake in the eyes. "Please," the old man said calmly, "don't do this." Jake was confused. Most people screamed or ran away, but this man was strong enough to hold him. His voice was steady, but his eyes were kind, not afraid. "Let me go," Jake shouted. He pulled again, but the old man didn't move. "I know you don't want to do this," the old man said. "Tell me, son, why are you robbing?" Jake hesitated. I need money," he muttered. "I have nothing." The old man sighed. "And you think robbing will help you?" Jake felt his hands shaking. The old man slowly opened his bag and took out a sandwich. "Here," he said, offering it to Jake. "You're hungry, aren't you?" the old man asked. Jake didn't know why, but he took the sandwich. He hadn't eaten all day. He sat down on the sidewalk and took a bite. The old man sat beside him. "I used to be like you," the old man said. "Long ago, I made bad choices. I hurt people. But one day, someone showed me kindness, and it changed my life." Jake looked at the man. "You were a thief?" The old man nodded. "Yes, and I lost everything because of it. My family, my freedom. I don't want you to make the same mistake." Jake felt something heavy in his chest. Jake felt ashamed. He looked at the bag in his hands. Slowly, he gave it back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The old man smiled. "It's not too late to change, son." "What's your name, son?" the old man asked. "Jack," he muttered. "I'm Henry," the old man said, smiling. "You've been on the streets for a while, haven't you?" Jack nodded. "A few months." "Have you tried finding work?" Jack scoffed. "Who would hire a homeless man?" Henry nodded slowly, as if thinking. "I own a small bakery 2 streets from here. I need someone to help in the mornings. It's not much, but it's something. If you want, you can start tomorrow." Jack blinked. "You're offering me a job?" "Yes," Henry said simply. "But only if you're ready to stop robbing and start trying again." Jack looked down at his hands. He had spent so long feeling useless, like he had no future. And now, this man, this stranger, was giving him a chance. "Why?" Jack asked. "Why are you helping me?" Henry smiled. "Because someone helped me once when I thought my life was over. And because I believe you're not a bad person, Jack. Just lost." Jack swallowed the lump in his throat. He didn't know if he could do it. He had failed so many times. But something about Henry's words made him want to try. The next morning, Jack stood outside the bakery, nervous. His hands were shaking. Maybe Henry had just said those words to be kind. Maybe he would change his mind. But when Henry saw him, he only smiled. "You're early. Good." That day, for the first time in months, Jack worked for his food instead of robbing it. The smell of fresh bread filled the air as he kneaded dough and wiped down counters. At the end of the day, Henry handed him a small envelope. "Your first pay," he said. Henry patted his shoulder. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Jack. What you do with it is up to you." Jack didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in months, he had hope. And that was enough to keep going. The Talking Cat. Mark had always lived alone. His days were quiet, his nights even quieter. He worked at a small bookstore, came home, made dinner for one, and scrolled through his phone until he fell asleep. There was no one to talk to, no one to share his thoughts with. One night, after another long, lonely day, he fell asleep on the couch. But this time, his dream felt different. A soft meow woke him up. When he opened his eyes, there was a small cat sitting on his coffee table. Its fur was messy, and its green eyes stared right at him. "Where did you come from?" Mark mumbled. He didn't remember leaving the door open. The cat stretched and sat down, tail curled around its paws. "You invited me in," it said. Mark blinked. He sat up straight. "What?" "I said you invited me in," the cat repeated, tilting its head. Mark's heart raced. He looked around. The room was the same. His couch, his books, his coffee cup on the table. Everything was normal, except for the fact that a cat was talking to him. "This must be a dream," he whispered. The cat yawned. "Maybe. But does it really matter?" Mark rubbed his face. "I don't talk to anyone for days, and now I'm dreaming about talking to a cat. That says a lot about my life." The cat jumped onto the couch beside him. "You're lonely," it said simply. Mark sighed. "Yeah, I guess I am." They sat in silence for a moment. Then, the cat nudged his hand with its paw. "Well, at least you have me. At least for tonight." Mark hesitated, then smiled a little. "Yeah, I guess that's nice." The cat curled up beside him, purring softly. The warmth of it felt real, comforting. "Do you have a name?" Mark asked. The cat shook its head. "Number, but you can give me one." Mark thought for a moment. "How about Leo?" The cat blinked. "Leo, I like that." Mark leaned back on the couch. "Maybe I don't mind this dream after all." Leo smirked. "Good. Now, do you have any chicken?" Mark chuckled. Even my dreams are demanding. Leo purred. Hey, at least your dreams finally have company. Mark closed his eyes, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. Maybe he would wake up soon, and Leo would be gone. But for now, he wasn't alone. And for the first time in a while, that was enough.
The letter in the book. Anna ran her fingers along the dusty book spines in the second-hand bookstore. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just passing time on a quiet afternoon. Then, her hand stopped on a familiar title. She pulled the book from the shelf, her heart skipping a beat. It was the same edition David had given her years ago. A strange feeling crept over her as she flipped it open. There, on the first page, was a folded letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her breath caught as she unfolded the paper. Anna, I don't know if you will ever read this, but I have to try. I know you never forgave me. I know you walked away that night thinking I had lied to you. But I didn't. That girl you saw me with, she's my stepsister. My father remarried, and I had trouble accepting it. I wasn't close to her, but I was trying. That night, she needed help, and I was there. That's all. I swear to you, there was never anything else. I wanted to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. I wanted to explain, but you shut me out. And when I realized I had lost you, it hurt more than I can say. I still don't know if you'll believe me. But if you ever find this, I hope you do. I hope you know I never stopped caring. David. Anna's hands shook. Memories rushed back. The anger, the heartbreak, the way she had walked away without looking back. She had been so sure he betrayed her. She never even gave him a chance to explain. She stared at the letter, her chest tightening. This book, this letter, it had been with her all along. But she had been too blind to see it. She had sold the book without ever opening it. And now, years later, it had found her again. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed her phone. She quickly searched through an old class social account. Scrolling down, she found him. David, still single. She hesitated. Maybe it was too late. Maybe he had moved on in every way except relationship status. Her heart pounded as she typed a message. David, I found your letter. A long pause. Her stomach twisted. Then, her phone vibrated. A new message. How are you? Anna exhaled slowly. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late.
Confession to my best friend. Ethan and Lily had been best friends since childhood. They met when they were 6, building castles in the sandbox, and had been inseparable ever since. Every birthday, every school project, every late-night conversation, it was always the two of them. As they grew older, their friendship deepened into something more. It was in the way Ethan always walked her home, even when it was out of his way. It was in the way Lily saved him the last bite of her favorite cake, knowing he loved it just as much. And one evening, under the soft glow of streetlights, Ethan finally found the courage to say it out loud. I love you, Lily. She stared at him, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, and then she smiled. I was waiting for you to say that. For a while, everything was perfect. Late-night movie marathons, road trips with no destination, dancing in the rain just because they could. Every moment felt endless, until it wasn't. Lily got sick. At first, she brushed it off, just feeling tired, a little weaker than usual. But the doctors said it was more than that. And one day, she sat Ethan down with tears in her eyes. They said I don't have much time. Ethan refused to believe it. Then we fight, he said, gripping her hands. We do everything we can. And even if the doctors say we only have a little time, then we make every second count. Lily wanted to believe him, but fear weighed on her. She started withdrawing, refusing to talk about the future. I don't want to make plans I can't keep, she whispered one night. But Ethan wouldn't let her give up. He planned little surprises for her. Flowers on her bedside table, handwritten notes hidden in her books, whispered promises that they would fight together. When the hospital walls felt too small, he took her outside. One day, he came into her room with a backpack. "We're going on a trip," he announced. She blinked. "Ethan, you can," he interrupted. "Even if it's just for a little while." Their first stop was the ocean. Lily had always wanted to see the sunrise there. Ethan carried her to the shore, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. They watched as the sky turned gold, the waves lapping gently at their feet. "See?" Ethan whispered. "We're not done yet." They traveled to the countryside, where wildflowers stretched endlessly. They lay under the stars, Ethan pointing out constellations and making up ridiculous names. "That one's the pancake dragon," he said. Lily laughed, shaking her head. "You're ridiculous." "But you're smiling," he pointed out. When the doctor suggested surgery, Lily hesitated. "What if it doesn't work?" Ethan squeezed her hand. "Then we try anyway, because I can't imagine a world without you in it." And she believed him. The surgery was long. Ethan sat in the waiting room, gripping the arms of his chair, barely breathing. Then the doctor came out, smiling. "She made it." When Lily woke up, Ethan was right there, holding her hand. "I told you," he whispered. "We're not done yet." This time, Lily smiled. Not out of hope, but out of certainty.
Traveling to find a lover? Emily had always dreamed of visiting Japan. Kyoto, with its ancient temples, glowing lanterns, and the scent of fresh street food, felt like a dream. She wandered through the old alleys, taking in the beauty of the wooden houses and quiet shrines. But soon, she realized she had no idea where she was. "Need help?" a voice asked. She turned to see a man with a friendly smile. "I'm Daniel," he said. "You look a little lost." Emily laughed. "I am. I was heading to the train station, but I think I walked too far." Daniel, a traveler from Canada, had been exploring Japan for months. He offered to walk with her, and as they strolled through the lively streets, they talked about their adventures. Emily, from New York, was visiting Japan for the first time. "You should try matcha," Daniel said, leading her to a small tea shop. Emily took a sip and made a face. "Bitter." "You'll get used to it," Daniel chuckled. They continued walking, stopping at a quiet temple. The soft glow of lanterns made the place feel magical. Emily took a deep breath, feeling peaceful. "Some moments in life feel perfect, don't they?" Daniel said. Emily nodded. Their connection felt effortless. They shared stories, laughed about travel mishaps, and realized how much they had in common. At a street food stall, Emily mentioned she was thirsty. "I'll grab some drinks," Daniel said, stepping away. Emily waited, watching the busy street. Minutes passed, then more. She checked her phone. No messages. She walked around looking for him, but Daniel was nowhere to be found. She waited nearly an hour, hoping he would return. Her phone buzzed, a reminder that her train was leaving in a few hours. She had no choice but to go. As she left, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. Back in New York, Emily often thought about Kyoto. She searched social media, travel blogs, anything that might help her find Daniel. But there was nothing. Daniel had also searched for her. On his way to buy the drinks that night, a bicycle had crashed into him, knocking him over. It wasn't serious, but he ended up at a clinic for a few hours. When he finally returned, Emily was gone. Without exchanging contact information, they had lost each other. Years later, Daniel took a trip to New York. He wanted to experience the city like a local, so he booked a room in a homestay instead of a hotel. When he arrived at the house, the door opened and he froze. Emily stood there, just as shocked as he was. "Daniel?" she whispered. "Emily?" For a moment they just stared at each other. Then they both started laughing. "You disappeared," Emily said, crossing her arms. "I waited forever in Kyoto." Daniel scratched his head. "You left before I came back. I got into a small accident on my way to get the drinks." Emily's expression softened. "I searched for you. I searched for you too." They sat in the living room, talking for hours, filling in the missing years. "So, you're staying here?" Emily asked. "For a while," Daniel said, smiling. "Maybe longer, if there's a reason to stay." Emily smiled back. Some connections never truly fade. They just find their way back in unexpected ways. Logic man vs. lovely girl. Leo was a man of numbers, logic, and cold precision. With an IQ of 180, he saw the world in calculations and probabilities. Emotions were unpredictable, messy, and in his opinion, unnecessary. Then he met Anna. It happened on a rainy afternoon at a cozy cafe. Leo had found a quiet corner, reading a research paper, when a cheerful voice interrupted him. "Careful! That coffee is hotter than it looks!" He looked up and saw a girl placing a cup in front of him. She had bright eyes and a smile that made the whole room feel warmer. "I'm Anna. Haven't seen you before," she said, wiping the counter. Leo simply nodded, uninterested in small talk. But something about her energy made it impossible to ignore her. Over the next few weeks, he found himself returning to the cafe, always sitting in the same spot, always ordering the same coffee. He told himself it was just a good place to work. But deep down, he knew it was because of Anna. Anna was different from anyone Leo had met. She wasn't interested in complex theories or science, but she had a way of understanding people that he never could. She remembered every customer's favorite drink, made strangers feel like friends, and found joy in the simplest things. One day, she sat across from him and asked, "You come here almost every day, but I never see you smile. Why so serious?" Leo hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. "It's just how I am," he finally said. Anna shook her head. "That's not true. I think you're just used to hiding it." From that day on, she made it her mission to break his walls. She would leave little notes with his coffee, silly jokes, random facts, even doodles of cats. Slowly, without realizing it, Leo began to look forward to them. One evening, Leo stayed at the cafe past closing time. He was stuck on a difficult problem, staring at numbers that didn't make sense. Anna walked over and placed a cup of tea in front of him. "Tea?" he asked, confused. "You look stressed. Tea is good for that," she said, sitting beside him. He sighed. "This project isn't working. I might have wasted months on it." Anna smiled. "Then maybe it's time for a break." Leo shook his head. "I don't do breaks." She laughed. "Well, I do. And since this is my cafe, you have no choice." She pulled him outside, where the rain had just stopped. The street was quiet, and the air was fresh. "See? The world didn't end because you stepped away for 5 minutes," she teased. For the first time in a long time, Leo felt something shift. Maybe work wasn't everything. Maybe he didn't have to figure everything out alone. Months passed, and Leo kept coming back, not just for the coffee, but for Anna. She had become his reminder that life was more than facts and logic. One evening, as she wiped down the counter, he finally said it. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Anna looked up surprised. Then she grinned. "Took you long enough?" Leo chuckled. Maybe love wasn't logical, but with Anna it made perfect sense.